You are watching The Big Story. I'm Shawn Yao.
I'm Maricel Halili.
And I'm Denise Tan.
Tonight's big stories. Yet another battle in Congress for Vice President Sara Duterte. After being questioned over confidential fund spending, she now faces an impeachment complaint.
The International Criminal Court now wants more witnesses to come forward. A lawyer explains this does not mean that the ICC lacks evidence on the Duterte drug war.
A Russian-attacked submarine was recently spotted off the West Philippine Sea, and President Bongbong Marcos finds that, quote, very worrisome.
Biggest story on this Monday, an impeachment complaint has been filed against Vice President Sara Duterte in the House of Representatives. And looking at the case's grounds, her alleged crimes range from betrayal of public trust to throwing tantrums in public.
For the complainants, it will be a race against time. With the holiday break and the midterm elections coming, it will be a long, drawn-out legislative process.
And it will also be a race for support. This early, a House leader does not see the impeachment complaint making it out of the lower chamber. Marian Enriquez has tonight's big story.
With 24 articles of impeachment, the formal move to oust VP Sara Duterte has begun. There were 16 signatories in the complaint, including key victims of the Duterte drug war, members of party lists and other sectoral groups, human rights advocates, and other activists. Akbayan endorsed the complaint, while former Senator Laila de Lima acted as the group's spokesperson.
Out of the 6 grounds for impeachment laid down in the Constitution, 5 po yung grounds. Culpable violation of the Constitution, graft and corruption, bribery, betrayal of public trust, and other high crimes. So ang wala lang na ground for impeachment is treason. So majority of the grounds are present.
It's shaping up to be a legal storm for Duterte. Last week, she admitted contracting someone to kill President Bongbong Marcos, the First Lady and the Speaker of the House. That cost her a subpoena from the National Bureau of Investigation, who wants her explanation by December 11. Then there's the series of hearings by the Good Government Committee on her confidential expenses as Vice President and as former Education Secretary. All these supposed transgressions of Sara, including her so-called meltdowns, are in the complaint that, if it were up to President Marcos, should not have been filed. The chief executive has said that this is just a waste of time of both lawmakers and ordinary Filipinos. In short, just a storm in a teacup. But for the Office of the House Secretary General, the impeachment complaint should be addressed as a constitutional obligation. It vows to adhere to the law and to fairness every step of the case's way. And it is a long process. 1/3 of more than 300 members of the House of Representatives should vote yes to the impeachment complaint for it to move forward. Then it's off to the Senate, which will serve as impeachment court and rule on the guilt or innocence of Sara Duterte. This early, congressmen doubt if the impeachment complaint would make it that far.
Ang magiging challenge lamang po dyan is yung possibility sa impeachment. Dahil unang-una po, alam naman po natin, by next year, by February, start na po ang national campaign. By March, start na rin po ang local campaign.
Naniniwala po tayo kapag gusto may paraan. Pag nakita nila na malakas itong ating complaint, malakas itong kasong ito, they will support it. I leave it at that.
For News 5, I'm Marian Enriquez. We are One News.
Let's discuss this further with attorney Enrique Buco de la Cruz. He is a senior partner over at Divina Law. Attorney Buco, welcome to The Big Story. Thanks for agreeing to join us on this very eventful Monday. Attorney, can you hear us?
Good evening, ladies, and thank you for having me.
Okay, I'm assuming you did not miss the big news about the first impeachment case filed over at the lower house. We're talking about 5 of the 6 grounds being present. We're talking 24 articles of impeachment presented in the complaint from the more recent events, some reaching back into the past. What do you make of all of this? Will it hold water? Is there enough in the complaint to hold water?
Well, we assess it based on 2 criteria, matter of form and matter of substance. No? As to form, it suffers from a bad timing. Mukhang mali po ang timing nung pag-file eh. You have to understand that there is a prescribed period for Congress to act on impeachment complaints. And if they fail to act on it or they are not able to vote on it or endorse it, it is deemed denied or shelved. In which case, the one-year ban will apply. So for 1 year, you cannot file any impeachment complaint against Vice President Sara Duterte. So that's on as to form, no. Also as to form, the more articles or grounds you raise, the lower the chances that you get one to pass, no, because it will take so much time to deal with all of these grounds. It's better to choose 1, 2, or 3 grounds, focus on those strong grounds, so as to focus the effort, no. You need votes. You need to convince at least 1/3 of the House to endorse the complaint.
Right. Attorney
And
Buko,
as to substance,
go
hindi paramihan ng grounds eh. Kailangan it has to amount to a breach of the Constitution. Kinakailangan high crime, not an ordinary crime, not a simple crime. It must rise to the level of high crimes. So hindi paramihan.
yun nga, Attorney Buko, kasi nung binabasa ko, of course, as a layperson, I'm not a lawyer nor a lawmaker, parang they just put everything that they didn't like so far from her performance. Even nung Davao City Mayor pa siya, even things na parang are more associated, kumbaga, with her father, the former president, like yung EJK, that she's involved in it. Now, ang tanong, we all know that by now, that impeachment is a very political exercise and it's not actually like a court case. But in the absence of actual court cases filed, how does this all jive? And paano ba dapat natin to, like, if we want to really exact accountability, is this really the best way?
Yeah, well, for an impeachable officer, the president, the vice president, and the constitutional commission officers, the only way to hold them accountable is by impeachment. But you need to study it carefully because, as I said earlier, if you file a weak one or a defective complaint, instead of holding her accountable, you're giving her immunity for 1 year. No, if you file the wrong complaint, a haphazard complaint, a defective complaint, you're correct in your observation. No, may mga isinama doon na pangyayaring hindi pa siya vice president. So obviously hindi yun pwedeng isama sa impeachment complaint dahil ang impeachment complaint dapat nakatutok lamang sa mga ginawa niya na paglabag sa konstitusyon nung siya ay pangalawang pangulo na ng Pilipinas. So that might work in favor of Sara Duterte if this complaint is found defective and will therefore insulate her, give her immunity for 1 year.
Attorney, you mentioned earlier na merong certain period for the Congress to act on the impeachment complaint filed against Vice President Sara Duterte. Gaano kahaba yung period for the Congress to act on it? Do they have enough time for the impeachment complaint, considering na hello, kailangan nilang i-prioritize yung budget natin for 2025 and campaign na by next year?
Sila na nga nagsabi nun, di ba?
Oo.
Magkaka-campaign na. So, baka daw hindi matuloy, tsaka 9 session days na lang ang natitira.
Correct. No, under the rules ng House, meron silang 10 araw mula sa pagkaka-file nitong complaint, no, para maisama ito sa agenda. And then mula sa pagkakasama sa agenda, may 3 araw sila para ito ay maitukoy sa committee, no, mai-refer sa committee para aralin. Now, that is very difficult kasi by December 20, mag-a-adjourn na sila for the Christmas break, no? So, medyo gipit na sa oras para gawin yan. And assuming na mai-refer yan sa committee, assuming by some miracle, maisingit sa agenda yan, mai-refer sa committee bago mag-break ng December 20, ang balik nila January 13 na eh. And under the rules, may 60 days lamang sila para mag-conduct ng hearings. Pag bumalik sila ng January 13, magbe-break ulit sila ng February 11 para sa campaign period. So wala nang 60 days doon, hindi nakakayanin eh. Pagdating ng campaign period kasi wala ka ng senador, pagdating ng March wala ka ng mga congressman. So I think hindi lulusot because of bad timing, no? Sa ilalim ng rules, dapat within 60 days magkaroon ng resolution. Either makakuha dapat yan ng botong 1/3. That's around 100 congressman. Dapat bumoto to endorse it to the Senate. Pag walang nakuhang 100 votes yan, it's deemed dismissed, not acted upon. 1 year, hindi ka na pwede mag-file ulit ng impeachment against VP Sara.
So last week, attorney, President Bongbong Marcos himself said that he is not in favor of impeachment complaint against VP Sara. Kaya nga siya yung nakipag-usap dun sa ibang legislators na wag nang mag-file. Pero hindi, well, obviously, some legislators did not listen to it. Ano yung implication nito? Paano namin to dapat basahin?
I think the president also realizes that any complaint filed now is problematic due to time constraints. So there are other urgent matters that should be threshed out and should be prioritized by Congress. The budget, of course, another priority legislative agenda, mas magandang doon ubusin yung oras dahil hindi na nga rin makakayang tapusin yung impeachment. So kahit simulan, uubos ka ng oras ng Kongreso, wala ka ring makukuhang resulta dahil hindi mo rin kayang tapusin within the limited period of time before the campaign. Kaya tama yung panawagan. It's not a directive from the president, it's a plea na pakiusap na huwag nyo nang unahin yan dahil mas maraming ibang importanteng bagay. I think even if the grounds were substantial, I'm not saying they are substantial, but even if they were substantial, it suffers from wrong timing.
Do you get the sense though, attorney, na minadali ito? Kasi nakakagulo. I mean, we've been talking about impeachment for months, di ba? But I think one of the reasons nga, no, and even the lawmakers from the House have said this, hindi nga matutuloy dahil nga ang awkward nung timing. Magpapasko, mag-e-election. Sila na nga mismo yung nag-amin nun. So, do you get the sense na minadali ito? Because supposedly, this is only the first and meron pa tayong inaabangan na possibly mag-file din yung mismo makabayan block sa House ng sarili nilang impeachment complaint this week.
Yes, mukhang ifinay lang para may ma-file, para makakuha ng media mileage siguro, no? Dahil I'm sure they are also aware na hindi ito kakayanin given the limited time. The fact that they added complaints, no? May mga isinamang offenses na hindi naman covered nung siya ay vice president na obviously it's haphazard, no? Minadali. Ano ang purpose? Ang purpose lang ito, malagay sa balita, makakuha ng media mileage, libreng airtime. Pero other than that, hindi kasi lulusot eh. Sayang. Sayang yung pagkakataon dahil isang taon na hindi mo na siya uli mapafilan eh. Magkakaroon siya ng immunity from the impeachment process for 1 year.
Pero attorney, you mentioned that earlier, yung timeline, the 60 days and the 10 days prior to that. Pero is it really that impossible to make it past the remaining sessions? Kasi yun naman pong binigay nyo, yung maximum lang po. It is actually possible na mas mapabilis po siya. Tama po ba?
Tama naman. There was one instance na pagka-file ng complaint, pumirma agad yung 73 or 75 congressmen na endorse agad sa Senate. Yun yung impeachment ni former President Joseph Estrada. So kung makakakumbinsi ng mag-i-endorsong 1/3 ng House, so sa ngayon mga 100 na ang kailangan kasi 300 plus ang miyembro ngayon ng House. Para ito ma-endorse sa Senado, kailangan mo ng 1/3. If you can convince 1/3 of Congress, kahit isang araw lang yan, basta mayroong pumirmang close to 1/3 or 1/3 of the House, diretso na yan sa Senate.
And walang choice yung Senate, di ba? Kailangan nilang tanggapin at kailangan nilang mag-convene as a tribunal.
Correct. Kahit panahon ng kampanya, kailangan nilang huminto sa kampanya at mag-conduct ng trial dahil meron din silang rules, meron ding prescribed period na kailangan nila itong simulan at sila ay magiging parang mga hukom, judges.
Okay.
But again, the threshold is kung makakakuha ka, if they will be able to get endorsement, signature, 1/3 from the members of the House.
Okay, Attorney Buko, nabanggit mo kanina, no, it's possible then na hindi nila tanggapin or parang ma-junk itong impeachment complaint. How does that work?
Well, ministerial yung pagtanggap, no? Kailangan nilang tanggapin, defective man yan o hindi. Pagka-refer sa committee, so within 10 days, ika-calendar sa agenda. Pag na-calendar sa agenda, you have 3 days to refer to the committee. Now, the committee will determine kung ito ay sufficient in form. Doon pa lang, pwede na magbutuhan base sa form. At pag hindi lumusot, the committee itself can reject this. Pag na-reject yan, tapos na. wala nang pag-uusapang impeachment. Pero as I said, mag-a-apply na yung 1-year ban. Dahil once the complaint is referred to the committee, ibig sabihin na initiate na ang impeachment process, the 1-year ban applies kapag na-dismiss yun or na-reject.
But
The
like,
committee can also vote, kahit sabihin ng committee this is sufficient in form, pagbobotohan din nila kung sufficient in substance. So 2 beses boboto ang committee. Usually ginagawa yan after mag-hearings. Ang problema nga natin, baka wala ng sapat na oras para mag-conduct ng hearings.
pero pwede ba rin itong ma-railroad? Because given na we've seen 2 straight Congresses with a supermajority, we've seen how fast they can move because they are united there. Is it possible no to kind of kumbaga madaliin to or baka may loophole silang nakikita na hindi natin nakikita that they can take it through that? Are you seeing anything, attorney?
I don't want to raise false hopes. Mukha hong hindi makakakuha ng ganung boto, mukha hong hindi kayang i-railroad for several reasons. No? Number one, as I said, the timing. Number two, the mixed signals coming from Malacanang. No? And number three, the leadership of the House. Walang ganung direksyon no? Na may instruction, may directive na i-railroad ito o madaliin. For the complainants to get 1/3 of the House immediately within a short period of time, you need the House leadership. You need Malacanang, no? To direct the members of the House to convince those in the majority in the coalition to act as one. Pero sa ngayon kasi iba-iba ang tinig. Ibig sabihin walang iisang himig, walang iisang utos, walang iisang boses. So I don't think this can be railroaded. It will follow the natural course of the time and rules and procedures, and it will die a natural death.
Attorney, aside from the impeachment complaint filed earlier today, of course, baka meron pa tayong aasahan na iba pang impeachment case that will be filed against VP Sara. What will happen kapag ka nagkasunod-sunod yung impeachment cases? Automatic ba yun? Will it be consolidated or will this make things more complicated?
It will make things more complicated, pero as I said, ministerial ang pagtanggap ng House ng impeachment complaint. So pag may nag-file ulit, tatanggapin lang yan ng House at tulad nung sinabi ko kanina, dadaan din sa proseso, no? Pagbobotohan kung sufficient in form, sufficient in substance. Kung sakasakaling parehong sufficient in form, parehong sufficient in substance, pwedeng pagsama-samahin into one articles of impeachment. Meaning, isa lamang yung complaint na ipapadala sa Senado manggagaling sa Kongreso. Kahit na 3, 4, 5 yung complaint, isa lamang yung set, yung articles na ipapadala sa Senado. So, mako-consolidate din siya kung lulusot sa committee.
Okay. For example, no, dagdagan natin yung example ni Maricel kasi naku-curious din ako. Kunwari, lumabas nga yung second impeachment complaint, let's say later this week. Who decides, after nung botohan na sinasabi ninyo ng committee, form, and then substance, who decides paano siya i-consolidate, which particular articles, which particular grounds? Yung committee ba on justice?
No, the whole Congress in plenary will decide which articles will be endorsed. In previous impeachment cases, the House leadership forms a prosecution panel, no? The prosecution panel, ito yung mag-act as the prosecutors, mga taga-usig ng impeachable officer. Sila yung pipili, sila yung gagawa niyan, sila yung maglalagay ng exact language kasi the language of the complaint is important. So kahit na 3, 4, 5 yung complaint, pagsasama-samahin yan into one set, isang complaint lang with articles of impeachment, pipili sila ng pinakamatitibay lang, at yun ang ihahain nila sa buong plenary. No, pag lumusot sa committee, hindi pa tapos. Kailangan mo pa rin makuha ang boto ng plenaryo. The whole Congress will have to vote on it. And if you get 1/3 of Congress, then yun ang ipapadala sa Senado. Not the various complaints, but only one set of complaint.
Attorney, pag umabot ito, let's say umabot siya sa Senado, sino po ang mag-preside over the impeachment trial?
The Chief Justice of the Philippines will act as presiding justice, and the members of the Senate will be converted into senator judges. No? So sila ay magiging mga hukom at ang magiging presiding officer ay ang Chief Justice. So technically, hindi sila Senado. sila ay magiging impeachment court. So, hiwalay yung trabaho nila bilang senador. After ng impeachment hearings, pwede silang magsesyon sa hapon. Tuloy pa rin yung pagiging senado nila. Pero habang sila ay gumaganap sa kanilang katungkulan bilang senator judges, nagbabagong anyo sila. No? They become the impeachment court.
Okay, so attorney, in an event na lumusot sa komite itong impeachment case ni VP Sara, umabot sa impeachment court, ano yung legal options ng presidente?
Well, the president has no
Or ng vice
participation.
president,
no?
rather. Sorry.
The vice president also cannot resign. She has no other option but to attend. No, prohibited siya from resigning from office. Kahit mag-resign, tutuloy kasi to. No? Ang consequence niyan, she will be like an accused. No? Sa mga previous cases nakita natin, ipapatawag siya, no? Pagpapaliwanagin, bibigyan ng pagkakataong magpaliwanag. After, of course, ng prosecution na ma-prove nila yung kanilang case. Ang susunod naman magpe-present ng ebidensya ay yung impeachable officer, in this case, the vice president. And then the Senate will vote, no, either to convict or to acquit.
Attorney, let me rewind lang a bit, no? Of course, we're talking about yun and so many what-ifs, right? But yung actual na nangyayari ngayon, no? Siyempre, ang pinagdedebatehan natin, confidential funds, the alleged misuse. We've heard different arguments from both sides, right? On one hand, the VP says, di pa nga tapos, let the COA finish their audit because meron pang legal process yan of file ng ganito and then pwede ka pa mag-submit ng extra hanggang ma-resolve. At the same time, sinasabi ng Congress, there's no prescribed time for us to do a hearing in aid of legislation. Ngayon, I'm really wondering, okay, ano ba dapat mauna? Dapat ba muna magkaroon muna ng resolusyon yung kaso? If we're gonna impeach somebody, let's say ito yung may mabigat na basehan, no, for impeachment, which is the misuse of confidential funds, which is graft and corruption, malversation, etc., and betrayal of public trust, hindi ba dapat may kaso muna siya or at least masabi muna ng COA with finality na, okay, talagang na-misuse yung funds, hindi ma-liquidate?
Okay. Distinguish natin, no? Kung ordinaryong opisyal ng gobyerno, any other elected official except the president and the vice president, tama yung sequence na yon, no? Kasuhan mo muna sila. Pag nakasuhan mo sila, then tsaka nyo po pwedeng sabihin na meron nga silang ginawang illegal, no? Dahil pwede mo silang kasuhan. The problem with the president and the vice president, you cannot sue them. You cannot charge them, no? You need to impeach them first. So baligtad. So hindi tama yung argumento na bakit nyo ako iniimbestigahan o ba't kayo nag-iimbestiga, hindi pa tapos ang COA, dahil isa lamang ang pwedeng mag-imbestiga sa President at Vice President and other impeachable officers, and that is Congress. No, because Congress has the power to impeach and therefore sila lang ang pwedeng mag-investigate. Hindi kailangan ng Kongreso na hintayin ang resulta ng investigasyon o findings ng COA bago ito mag-imbestiga kung paano ginastos ang pondo ng bayan. Pwede nila itong gawin at any time in aid of legislation. At yung paggawa ng budget is part of legislation. So yung pagtatanong, pag-iimbestiga kung saan napunta ang pondo para maplano mo yung ilalagay mong pondo for next year ay bahagi ng trabaho ng Kongreso at Senado at pwedeng gawin anytime.
Attorney, let me just go back to what you said na hindi po pwedeng kasuhan ang Vice Presidente. Isn't the Vice President, di ba po, she is not, does not have immunity from suit?
Tama po, wala siyang immunity from suit, pero siya ay impeachable officer. So yun po ang kaibahan, no? Dahil siya ay impeachable officer, hindi mo siya po pwedeng tanggalin sa pwesto, paharapin sa anumang kasong administratibo o kriminal nang hindi mo muna siya natatanggal sa kanyang pagiging vice presidente. And you can only do that by impeachment.
So, okay, medyo bago to sa amin kasi they always bandy about di ba? Naririnig natin, the Vice President is not immune from suit, the Vice President is not immune from suit. So, ang dapat magawin is impeach siya muna bago siya kasuhan sa normal na korte, like everybody else.
Yes, marami nang naunang halimbawa niyan. Ano? Merong isang kasong ipinail against a tanod bayan, a prosecutor, no? May ipinail na kaso laban sa justice ng Supreme Court. Kung maalala nyo, in fact, lahat sila kinasuhan for corruption, no? umabot sa Korte Suprema ang kaso at sinabi ng Korte Suprema, hindi nyo sila po pwedeng kasuhan, ni hindi nyo sila po pwedeng ipa-disbar, which is a entirely different proceeding, habang sila ay nakaupo bilang impeachable officer. Dahil mawawala sila sa pwesto pag sila ay nakasuhan. Ang sabi sa saligang batas, ang pwede lang mag-alis sa kanila sa pwesto ay impeachment.
Pahabol lang, attorney. You mentioned earlier na, of course, kapag impeachment complaint, obligado si VP Sara na mag-attend doon sa hearing. Pero as nakikita natin sa mga previous congressional hearings, she was not very cooperative. So what will happen if she still refuses to attend impeachment cases or impeachment proceedings, just in case na lumusot sa komite?
Under the rules of the Senate, tutuloy-tuloy nila yun eh. The accused, the respondent in this case, can waive. No? Kung ayaw niyang mapakinggan ang kanyang panig, pwede namang hindi siya magsalita. Karapatan niya yon, no? Na hindi magsalita. Pero hindi mapapakinggan ang kanyang paliwanag at hahatulan siya ng Senado base lamang sa ebidensyang hawak nito. No? So, yun ang risk. Pwede siyang makasuhan, ma-charge at ma-convict based lamang sa ebidensya ng prosecution kung hindi siya sasagot at magpapaliwanag. Sa Amerika, may halimbawa tayo na si President Nixon hindi na hinintay yung impeachment. Nung ito ay lumusot mula sa House, nung dadali na sa Senate, inunahan na niya, nag-resign na siya. No? So, yun yung mga, at yung Senado, hindi na tinuloy kasi nag-resign na siya. So, those are the possibilities. Pero yung mag-i-insist, no, if she will take a position that she will not participate, it will not stop the impeachment court from proceeding. Magtutuloy-tuloy po yun at maglalabas na desisyon base lamang sa ebidensyang meron sila.
Okay. Maraming salamat for everything that you talked us through tonight. And of course, for sharing your time and your knowledge with us, Attorney Enrique Buco de la Cruz, Senior Partner of Divina Law. Thank you so much for your time.
The International Criminal Court is not calling for more witnesses because it lacks evidence on the Duterte drug war. That's what ICC Assistant to Counsel Attorney Cristina Conti clarified after the ICC opened an online portal to appeal for witnesses. Conti explained that if anything, this is a good indication that the ICC probe is progressing well. For the human rights lawyer, the ICC move should be considered more as a last call before the probe goes into trial phase. The court, she added, is just casting a wider net and having a bigger picture of the war on drugs from information that came out of the House Quad Committee hearings.
Ang target market nila kumbaga yung mga hindi pa nare-reach out ng ICC. Kasi biktima, medyo kausap na nila, many other actors kausap na nila. Iniisip lang nila, baka may iba pang gustong humabol. At, which is good news for us, I think this is solidifying the case for trial. Kasi kung question lang ay who is most responsible, 2 months ago, 2 weeks ago ba, umamin I am most responsible. And we've solved the question already. But as with any good lawyer, you should be ready for trial and prepare the case even for conviction.
Up next, a Russian submarine is spotted in the West Philippine Sea while Filipino fishermen in Rosal Reef complain of harassment from Chinese Navy. We'll get the details on these with AFP spokesperson Colonel Francel Padilla when we return. Keep it here on One News.
Welcome back. You're still watching The Big Story here on One News. The Philippines expressed deep concern over China's reported use of a helicopter in harassing Filipino fishermen in the West Philippine Sea. Video taken in Rosal Reef last Thursday showed the helicopters from the People's Liberation Army hovering just 15 feet over some 20 boats of Filipino fishermen. According to them, the Chinese are pushing them away from the area for 2 days already. Fortunately, no one was hurt, although the Philippine Coast Guard was deeply alarmed.
Ang pinaka-dangerous na harassment na ganyan is that it might alam mo yun, masira yung light material structure ng boat. It might also capsize dahil sa pag-push ng hangin ng chopper.
Now, on that same day, the Armed Forces of the Philippines also reported a sighting of a Russian submarine in the West Philippine Sea. It was spotted just 80 nautical miles from Mindoro Island, which President Bongbong Marcos himself found concerning.
All of that's very concerning. Any intrusion into the West Philippine Sea of our EEZ or of our baselines is very worrisome. So, yes, it's just another one.
According to the National Security Council, a Philippine Navy frigate immediately tailed and sent a radio challenge to the submarine. The Russians answered that they were just waiting for the weather to clear up before heading home to their home port in Vladivostok. The submarine was en route to Russia after they joined exercises in Kota Kinabalu, Malaysia.
On the way na siya pabalik sa kanyang naval base sa Vladivostok. Sabi naman siya na nag-aantay lang siya na gumantay yung panahon.
Let's discuss this some more with Colonel Francel Padilla, spokesperson of the AFP, or the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Colonel Padilla, thank you so much for joining us tonight. First, tell us how you were able to spot the Russian submarine. Were we doing air patrols? Were they sea patrols who spotted them? What happened?
First of all, good evening, Shawn, Mase, and Denise, and thank you for having us tonight. Foremost, this submarine was detected by our radar that is from the Philippine Navy. And so it was reported to us, and we confirmed that it was on November 28th that this Russian submarine identified as UFA 490 was sighted 80 nautical miles west of Cape Calavite, which is in Occidental Mindoro.
But if the submarine did not surface, ma'am, meron ba tayong capability? Do we have enough asset to monitor or to detect kung may pumapasok dun sa exclusive economic zone natin?
Yes, ma'am. No, we have a mix of different equipment to be able to detect yung presence nga nito, surfaced or underwater.
Okay. We just want to know, Colonel Padilla, whether this radar is new. We understand we were talking about the new laws, yung maritime zones natin and archipelagic sea lanes. And we understand that that is not yet in effect, but it seems like this radar was already able to monitor. Ito po ba yung radar that we're going to be using to enforce our territories? And is it new?
We have different set of equipments, and we also have from our partners, no. So we actually share information, and ito naman part na rin ng modernization assets that we have been acquiring through the years.
Mm-hmm. And Colonel, if the submarine was tracked by that radar that you mentioned a while ago, by our own system, are we now able to monitor other vessels? Is that what it means? And kung oo po, up to what extent?
This is what's important with this, no, that we were able to monitor the presence of this submarine. So with this, we can see that the capabilities are really getting to be modernized at this point, no, and because of this, we were able to immediately deploy assets to monitor and address the situation. And with that, we were able to ensure the security of the Filipino waters.
Pero, Colonel, is this really a cause of concern? Well, President Bongbong Marcos earlier mentioned that this is very worrisome. But I heard the National Security Council, well, particularly Assistant Director General Jonathan Malaya, mentioned that this is just part of the freedom of navigation. Right. So which is which?
Of course, we were surprised that may Russian nga, no, na vessel within our waters. So that is the one that is of concern to us, that meron ng ganitong presence. But what is important to note is that we were able to detect them and react accordingly.
Pero ano po yung protocol? Kasi if this is part of the freedom of navigation, should they ask permission first from the Philippine government since this is part of our exclusive economic zone Or okay lang na po
Kasi
no,
to add to Mase, no,
dumaan.
it was found in our EEZ but it was not in our territorial waters. I understand may parang FYI especially if you're using like a navy or a military, some sort of craft, diba? You have to parang tell the country na, hey, I'm passing by just to not cause any panic. But does that also apply in the EEZ or just in the territorial seas?
Under the UNCLOS, no, the authority under freedom of navigation kapag submerged siya or surface. But if it is territorial waters, it should be surface and it is within 12 nautical miles. It's innocent passage.
So in this case,
Freedom of navigation because it's in the EEZ.
Even if they didn't tell us and we were kind of caught by surprise, at least our radar caught it, you're right about that. But, I mean, moving forward, should we expect that they kind of contact the AFP and tell them that they are passing by, since it is also I think, an official Russian vessel?
Under the UNCLOS, it's under freedom of navigation if it's within the EEZ.
Okay.
so having said that, does it mean that the Russian sub or the Russian government does not have any violation when it comes to this issue? Kasi, well, the way I understand it, when you say EEZ, tayo yung may karapatan na mag-exploit dun sa resources or it has something to do with the economy, right? So, since wala naman silang in-exploit, hindi naman sila nag-loiter and they just, kailangan lang nilang mag-surface because of bad weather, they don't have any violation. Is that correct?
As they were just passing through. And during the time that the Navy has issued the challenges, they were very cooperative and told us the real reason that they were just waiting for the weather to clear.
And Colonel, they're saying now if there's one thing that we learned from this is that we can now swiftly respond to such incidents, for escort or to intercept. How fast was our response time to the submarine's presence?
When we were informed of the presence, we immediately deployed the BRP Jose Rizal FF-150, and it established radio communications with the submarine. And the submarine confirmed its identity, its crew complement, and the navigational intent. So the Russian vessel actually stated that it was just awaiting improved weather conditions before proceeding to Vladivostok in Russia. So the Philippine Naval Forces, including the FF-150, escorted, and we monitored the operations to ensure that the submarine's compliance with maritime regulations within our Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone was been nasunod talaga to the letter.
Okay, since that's pretty much settled, I think let's move on to the Rosal Reef, where Filipino fishermen supposedly are complaining because they have been experiencing harassment from Chinese vessels around that area. Do we have confirmation, Colonel, kung is this Coast Guard, Chinese Coast Guard, militia vessels, or PLA vessels?
At this point, the statement was given from our Philippine Coast Guard, so we defer it from our Philippine Coast Guard and the details of that. But rest assured po, sa side ng Armed Forces of the Philippines, we keep telling our fishermen to continue fishing in the waters in our exclusive economic zone, as the right to do so is nandito sa atin. And the Armed Forces of the Philippines will always be there to support them. So tuloy-tuloy po yung ating pagpapatrolya. Ang Philippine Navy po natin, nandiyan po, continuously doing our patrols 24/7. And our Philippine Air Force are also doing maritime patrols every now and then on a regular basis.
Okay, so for now, that matter is in the purview of the PCG or the Coast Guard?
Yes, ma'am. Commodore Tariela has also given details on that. So do we defer to the PCG at this point, ma'am?
All right. I think that's all that we have, all the questions we have for you tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. AFP spokesperson, Colonel Francel Margaret Padilla. Maraming salamat po sa oras ninyo, ma'am.
Up next, heavy rains flood several areas in southern Luzon and the Bicol region. That and more big stories when we return. Keep it here on One News.
Welcome back. You're still watching The Big Story here on One News.
Metro Manila and some parts of southern Luzon experienced scattered rains due to the effects of a shear line from the Amihan. A shear line is when the cold air of the northeast monsoon or Amihan meets the warm air of the Pacific Ocean. This caused intense rainfall in parts of Quezon Province and the Bicol region, leaving several areas flooded. Pag-asa says the shear line will persist and will continue to bring moderate to heavy rains this week. Tomorrow, moderate to heavy rains is forecast in Quezon, Aurora, Isabela, and Cagayan, which will continue in Cagayan and Isabela until Wednesday. Affected residents are advised to remain alert against floods and possible landslides.
PLDT's wireless unit Smart Communications has blocked nearly 2 billion malicious text messages from reaching customers within the first 10 months of 2024. According to a statement by Smart, more than 200 million malicious messages and 46,000 numbers have been blocked in October alone. According to the company, fake cell towers allowed scammers to keep sending malicious messages to mobile users in localized areas. PLDT and Smart has collaborated with the National Telecommunications Commission and the Cybercrime Investigation and Coordinating Center to catch and apprehend these fraudsters. Of course, telcos are still advising and urging subscribers to be vigilant in clicking links or answering unknown phone numbers, especially this holiday season.
But they have a new style now, not just on text messages, sa mga Viber messages. I don't know kung nakaka-receive kayo, pero ako, I received several messages in the past few days through Viber. Tapos parang ang style nila, nag-aalok sila na, do you want to have an extra income? Something
Yes,
like that.
I always get that.
Tapos
Also on WhatsApp.
Ako sa Telegram.
Diba?
Telegram.
Sa Telegram.
Pero the most text I would get is through yung ano talaga, yung text message.
SMS.
SMS and SMS. Tapos ang gagaling because usually you identify them pag yung random phone number lang.
Yes.
But now they have the name of the
They have
company.
names.
Oh, yeah.
Tapos if you're not too focused on it, makikita mo kunyari yung certain app may extra letter S. extra
May
letter
konting
A,
wrong spelling.
May konting wrong spelling.
Ayun nga, kung malabo pa naman yung mata mo, pinag-uusapan lang natin. Malabo na yung mata nating tatlo, di ba? Except for Denise, na nagpaayos ng mata. Pero parang minsan di mo na mapapansin may isang may isang extra letter doon or yung letter Y naging letter J. Mga
So
ganyan.
parang just to be safe, delete na lang. Dati ginagawa ko, binablock ko pa yung number eh. Pero masyadong
Pero sobrang
madami
dami
para
na.
i-block mo lahat ng number. So delete na lang ng delete. Kasi yung worry ko doon, baka mamaya meron akong na-miss na link pala na nasend. Although ngayon, they're very careful na eh. Wala nang link na nasend sa text messages. Di ba?
Kasi
But just
binablock.
to be sure,
Yun yata yung mga
delete.
binablock.
Pero yung isang because we were talking to Sir Monisberto, the Think Kamuna campaign nila, and they said na one of the best things that you can do also is, let's say makakuha ka ng text na saying, oh, you won this in a certain app, you go to the app. Because if they send you a text message, they're also gonna send you a message on the app. Sigurado daw yun.
Yung inbox doon sa app. Yun nga, so if yung sobrang lately pinag-uusapan natin, no, Christmas season, laging umaakyat, no, yung mga petty crimes, kasama na yung mga scammers. And if you're wondering how scammers nowadays send yung hindi na lang random numbers, pero yun yung may pangalan na doon sa taas, doon sa yung sender name, kumbaga. Meron daw silang IMSI catchers. Ano ba ibig sabihin ng IMSI? That means International Mobile Subscriber Identity. So they basically, anyone with that machine can go to a crowded place, turn it on, and pwede niyang isend sa lahat ng tao in the vicinity. So
I think even if you're passing
by,
nakakotse ka, masagap nung, ano ba tawag doon? Like the tower or the machine. Because ginugal namin to, you can actually buy that online.
yes, sa Lazada. Sorry.
So yun ang ginagamit ng mga politiko para madaling makapag-campaign. Blast agad.
Yung mga text blast, dala nila yan sa mga barabarangay, di ba? So yun nga kasi kaya daw nitong machine ma-detect lahat ng cellphone. Kunyari, may extra cellphone ka sa bag, hindi ko nga alam, pero alam nung machine na may extra cellphone ka sa bag. So I guess, kailangan talaga natin maging aware. Our telco providers are actually recommending to be really, really vigilant. If you notice, you've also gotten an increase in official messages, emails, and texts. Na minsan nalilito na nga ako dahil Tingnan mo yung unread messages ko, 100
Ang dami na, di ba?
Combination of scam messages and
yung totoo.
advice.
Yes, that's true.
Advice na parang do not fall for scam.
Yeah. So the thing is, if you don't know the number, whose number is it, huwag nyo nang pansinin. Delete it agad.
Correct.
Oo,
Kasi kung
if it's
importante yan,
important-
tatawagan niya kayo.
Exactly.
Hindi ko lang sure kung napaka-old school method na ba yun.
Hindi.
no?
Ako nag-block ako eh. Tsaka
Nag-block.
auto-reject.
Oh,
Auto-reject of
auto-
unknown numbers. Anyway, pwede natin pag-usapan pa yan in the next time. But now, that will have to do it for our show tonight. And just to remind everybody, it's 23 nights to go before Christmas.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Good night, and we'll see you tomorrow.